Hello! We're doing something a little bit different today, where if you know me, you know that one of the things I do is make games. I like making tabletop games, like card games and board games, and I have made a bunch of stuff for RPGs. But one of the things that comes up is the tools of making, what are ideas I can give people or ways of approaching or thinking about games that means that they can make games too. I'm a firm believer in an almost radical position of as many people as possible should have the tools available to them to make games if they want to make games. This often gets heard in terms of, let's make video games, or let's make specifically Euro-style board games. But I try and make sure that my definitions are very broad, so people can get a handle on a huge variety of options available to them. One thing that I get asked from time to time by writers is, how do I write for games? Which often to me feels like a slightly sidestepped version of the question, which is, can you write games? To them I point to these old 90s game books. These are particularly nostalgic items to me. The one we have here is Steve Jackson's Creature of Havoc from 19-something I should have looked up earlier. What we're going to do now is Let's Play of Creature of Havoc. Now, this is a book from later in the lifespan of this particular genre, so there's a lot of conventions that they'd kind of gone, well, everyone who's buying these books knows this stuff already, and also they had kind of gotten a formula of sorts. That means that this one, which is meant to be like a developed version of it, it's kind of got a bit of a lore dump at the start, so we're going to go through that. And the other thing is, these books are famously unfair, so you might find a point where I decide to give up on the fair version of the game and just start cheating. One of the other things about this game is that you're meant to write stuff down, like recording an inventory, your own stats and your own hit points and whatnot. And I'm going to do that, but it's not going to appear on the overlay. I'm going to do that with a piece of paper in front of me because that feels most authentic to me and honestly feels easiest. If you can't tell by what's going on this screen, there's a lot of stuff that there's a lot of stuff here that's more elaborate than I would normally do. But we're giving something interesting and new a try. So, without further ado, Creature of Havoc. This here is the character sheet we're going to be looking at. Items carried and information. I have note paper in front of me to take that. Skill, stamina, and luck, and skill and stamina of enemies. We'll have to roll stats on that kind of thing after a moment. How to fight the creatures of Trolltooth Pass. I'm going to hold on this frame for a bit, so if you want to pause it and have a look at these rules, we'll get there. But for now, I'm just going to launch into knowing what I need to do. So first up, I need to calculate my skill, stamina, and luck. So first things first, we need 1d6. Oops. Let's get rid of you. Okay. I'm going to roll 1d6 and add 6 to it. Oof. Okay, so we're a skill 8. And while we're at it, we'll do the luck as well, because that's 1 dice. Oof, also luck 8. And our stamina, which will probably be the one that changes the most, that's going to be 2d6. Oh, look at that magnificent d6. Okay. Ho-ho! Okay, so we're going to be a chunksome creature with 11 plus 12 hit points. So, sorry, stamina points. It's hit points, everyone. We know it's hit points. I'm always a little embarrassed when developers feel the need to try and define away from that. Alright, so, for reasons that will be explained below, skill, stamina, and luck change constantly during an adventure. You must keep an accurate record of these scores, and for this reason you advise either to write small in the boxes or keep an eraser handy. But never rub out your initial scores. Though you may be awarded additional skill, stamina, and luck points, these totals may never exceed your initial scores except on very rare occasions when you'll be instructed on the particular page. So, when it comes to fights, it's a very simple d6 rolling system. I will be rolling 2 dice for my opponent, add their skill, and roll 2 dice for myself, add my skill, higher number wins. That's it. It is a rudimentary system. You can also use luck to augment it, but I will probably forget that a lot. Alright. There's also just stuff... One of the things that I like about this one in particular is that if you roll doubles when rolling for attacks, you just kill something. And this one even has area effect combat, where you can fight more than one thing at once. What a fun and weird game system to evolve this way. Luck is the stat that they just use as an all-purpose, like, we don't want to just give things to you kind of way. Alright. And now, a bunch of lore. Let's see. Tales of Trolltooth Pass. The Creature of Havoc adventure takes place in the region of Alansia, where the dusty Windward Plain meets the Trolltooth Pass. North of the pass, the Forest of Spiders and the Moonstone Hills hide dark secrets. This is the region that the necromancer Zaradan Mar considers his own. To the south, the town of Salamonis stands as the last vestige of civilization before the rolling hills become the mountainous reaches of Balthus Dyer's Kragan Heights. Westward, the featureless Windward Plain leads the way towards Port Blacksand and the Western Ocean. The plain is a vital trade route between Eastern Alansia and both Western Alansia and the Old World. Wares are brought to the west by merchant caravans, which are heavily guarded by hired warriors known as strong-arms, whose job it is to see the caravans pass safely across the flatlands, those treacherous wastes east of Trolltooth Pass. Once through the pass, the strong-arms leave the caravans at Chalice or Silverton and pick up another caravan making the return journey. Some prefer the peace and quiet of smaller villages like Coven and Drystone, but not even the most courageous strong-arm will stay near Dree, home of the witch women. Let me just editorialize momentarily here. These books are from the 90s. I have not looked at this book in depth for about 20 years, so I just want to make it clear. There is a very strong chance that this is all going to get very yikesy, and I'm going to be pointing that out if I notice it. But just content warning, 90s British fantasy culture, I guess? Dree, village of the witch women. A dark village nestling in the fork of 2 rivers like a viper in its nest. Dree is a magnet for miscreants and black-hearted creatures. It came into being originally as a home of the exiled hag witch Rumina Dree, who had been banished from the town of Salamonis for her hideous magical experiments. Not content with the more acceptable forms of witchcraft, curses foretelling the future, love potions and herbal remedies... Hang on, hold up. Love potions are not an acceptable form of witchcraft, just saying. Like, that's weird, and it gets into weird spaces when it comes to violating consent. Don't love potion, kids. She turned her attentions to the essence of life itself. Romina Dree developed a fascination for what became known as Maranga. I hope that's a made-up word. The transplanting of limbs and organs from one creature to another by magical means, and was obsessed with her desire to create a sort of hybrid super creature. Her magic was used on both men and beasts, and left many mutant mixtures in each species suffering in the gutters of Salamonis. Her vile witchcraft was branded an unholy insult to the sanctity of life. She was on the verge of displeasing the gods of Salamonis. She was on the verge? Anyway, thus she was banished from the town. She was taken in chains to a place far north of Salamonis and there released. This place was in the fork between the Deedle Water and Spider Rivers, and there Romina Dree made her home and continued her experiments. You know what? I appreciate to some degree the lack of murder in that story, but I think that when you're like mangling people together in a medieval village, they'd probably get a little death penalty on you. Though exiled from Salamonis, she was not without her devotees, and many of her fellow hag witches from Salamonis made the pilgrimage to visit or even join Romina in Dree, as the growing village became known. And from other areas of Alansia, witch women joined the growing community, where they could practice their black arts freely and learn more of the developing art of Maranga from Romina herself. Outsiders who sailed the Deedle Water and happened across the witch women's village were horrified at the sights they saw. Semi-creatures with dreadful deformities were left to the streets to suffer. indescribable monsters which by rights should never have seen life at all, but were now doomed to scratch the living in the gutters of Dree. This they did by murdering and feeding off other creatures whose mutations were such that they could not defend themselves or escape. Hell itself could surely not boast that its minions were as wretched as the Maranga-spawned creatures of Dree. This is why it's important to have robust structural healthcare. The witch women revelled in their creations. In their eyes, such suffering was inevitable, and they considered their creations no more than living vegetables, unworthy of pity. The creatures were eaten as food, or kept as pets, or used as subjects in further Maranga experiments. Later, the most hideous were sold to visiting merchants and traders as curiosities, and many of them are seen in the travelling circuses, which tour Alanesia. If you read some of the other books, you will actually find these occasional references to these strange Maranga creatures. Dree's notoriety spread, and the greedy eyes of opportunistic traders turned towards the village. Trading witchcraft was a time-consuming business, since witches tend to be hermit-like creatures, living alone in obscure places. If trade links could be established with Dree, how convenient it would be to buy potions, charms, curses, and enchanted objects from a single place. Or so merchants thought. But setting up trade links was not easy. All visitors to Dree who were not practicing witches were at the first greeted warmly, but when the crafty witches felt their visitor relaxed his guard, a simple potion was administered to enable them to be captured easily. This was how the witches acquired fresh subjects for their experiments. The first trader to venture into Dree and survive was Ganga of Mayawater. His enterprise was to be admired, and he made handsome profits from his trading. He was the first to realize the only way to trade successfully was to enter Dree with goods the witches valued but could not get elsewhere. He was the first to think of that? He scoffed at his foreigners, who took in exotic fruits, jewels, fine silks, and spices. Each one had finished up with a claw-beast's arm, a lizard-man's face, or a mungee's brain, if he was allowed to leave at all. Ganga took not spices but herbs, scullyweed, medusa grass, curse leaf, purity plant, and the like. He took in dried goblin livers, manticore stings, elf eyes, and pulped flesh orb juice. The witches became willing partners in his trading activity, as it was many years before other traders appeared with similar items of witchcraft that deprived him of his profitable monopoly. By then, Ganga had already made his fortune. The women of Dree. Oh boy. The witch women formed an insular community. They very rarely left the village of Dree, and usually only in spiritual form. However, Ramina's younger sisters delighted in appearing to the world outside. These three, known as the Women of Dree, have become infamous around Trolltooth Pass for appearing to travellers and strong-arms, to warn them of something or send them on missions. Their unexpected appearance is terrifying, and they may lead an unwary traveller to distrust them. Certainly they are known to have sent many an adventurer on a pointless mission merely in jest. That has also happened in one of the other books. But they do seem to have some sort of maternal instinct towards mankind, and they're probably feared more than they ought to be. They were trading in livers. There is no evidence of their actually causing harm to those in whom they have chosen to meet, unlike their neighbours in Dree. The rest of the world would be happy to leave Dree alone, so long as the women kept to themselves, but one or two of the witches have been known to leave Dree and settle in the lands of men. Usually they establish themselves in harmless occupations as herbalists like Vitrinia in the Forest of Yore, fortune-tellers like Rosina near Coven, or cooks like the Sisters of Sheena in Balthus Dyer's Citadel. Balthus Dyer's Citadel strikes me as an incredibly shitty place to work. But occasionally, one of the witchwomen will leave Dree in search of mischief. This was the origin of the ill repute of the village, and more often with the strengthening of Zaradan Mar's power, Dree has earned the abject hatred of the people of the Trolltooth Pass. Bear in mind, this book uses pages to represent effectively processing power and memory and all sorts of computational stuff that you would use use in a game engine. So consider that they've blown the first 20 pages of this book on this bullshit. Zaradan Mar, the Necromancer. It was Ramina's sisters who secretly raised the infant Zaradan. No one knows who fathered the child, but the most likely candidate is one of the numerous hell demons summoned up by the witchwomen during their black masses. Some, however, prefer to believe that the necromancer is merely a product of another Maranga experiment. Being the only man-child in a village of witchwomen, the sisters removed him from the village and raised him somewhere in the Moonstone Hills. When he was old enough, Sir Raden was sent east into the flatlands to be educated. He had already shown skill in simple sorcery, and the witches wished him to study the magic arts under a teacher of great repute. This man was Volgera Darkstorm, and the young Zaradan was accepted as his pupil along with two others, Balthus Dyer and Zagor. Zagor is a very important character in the lore. The three of them then studied hard and perfected the black arts with a skill which Darkstorm had never seen in any of his previous pupils. The three became both friends and rivals, each respecting the other's skills, but each striving to prove that theirs were the greatest. It was during his studies that Zoraden changed his name. Zoraden Dree, as he was called, was a name that embarrassed him. Dree was a village of witches, and the name was a constant reminder of their primitive magic, with its simple herbalism and curses, and like stitching people to pieces, but, The only interest Zoraden had in his home was the witch's fascination with Miranga, a subject that obsessed him. He changed his name with a single spell. You could just tell people that. Which he had learned especially from an ancient black magic tome. There is a whole bunch of semiotics there about how we view names. One midsummer night, he locked himself away from sunset to sunrise to complete the ritual. When he emerged, Zoraden Dree was a name which had been erased from the minds of everyone who had ever heard of it. Instead, from that time onward, all would know the young man as Zoraden Mar. Something trans rights? Mar and his co-pupils learned at a rate which astonished the aging Darkstorm, which soon became fearful of their powers. When they sensed their mentor's weakness, the three eventually turned their allegiance from him towards themselves, and they revelled in the power that their new skills brought. Into their minds, they became powerful demigods, scornful of the pathetic world around them. When Volgara Darkstorm realized how dangerous his pupils were becoming, he tried to stop them. The result was a short, bloody battle of magic between the three, which ended as the Demotic Three, as they called themselves collectively, cut down their teacher with a carefully disguised Rain of Knives spell. It's Rain of Knives, love. After looting the old wizard's library, the young sorceress fled Darkstorm's home and headed east towards Trolltooth Pass. From there, they sought refuge in Darkwood Forest, where they eventually split up to continue their own separate ways. The Coven. Zoraden Mar disguised himself as a prospector and headed south towards the village of Coven, a half-day's journey from his home in Dree. Though his disguise was merely a sham to enable him to build an underground stronghold for his future operations, he was astonished to find gold deposits in the ground. He immediately realized that with gold he could recruit an army, and soon his Yellowstone mines were making him powerful and wealthy man. His real ambition, however, was not to become merely wealthy, but to rule over his own empire and eventually over the whole of Alanzia. But this he could not do alone. He had already recruited Velasca Rue, a well-rounded human with a fiery temper to supervise his mines. Rue was a scruffy character, but he had a will of iron and shared Mar's thirst for power. His loyalty to his master persuaded Mar to share his secret ambitions with Rue, and between the two of them they laid plans of conquest. Velasca Rue was dispatched to find suitable officers for Mar's army. Meanwhile, Mar himself was deep in thought. He had recently heard a story which was occupying his mind. Hannicus, a wizard of neutral alignment, my god, that's awkward phrasing, had arrived in Coven to gather supplies to take back to his home in Knot Oak Wood. During his visit, he had bumped into Zoraden Mar. After some hours of talk, Mar offered Hannicus a position with his underground complex, looking after the area in which he held his office, outside the mines. Hannicus gratefully accepted. Mar realized that the wizard knew much about the surrounding regions, and he pressed Hannicus for more and more of his knowledge. Among other tales, Hannicus told Zoraden the legend of the vapors of Stittle-Wood. The Rainbow Ponds. Hidden deep within the dark depths of the forest of spiders, sheltered from prying eyes by tall, spear-tipped trees, is an enchanted glade. Though outsiders have never seen this glade, thus no story can ever fully be believed, it is said to contain a number of beautiful rock pools, as if designed by the gods themselves. Each pool is decorated with brightly coloured flowers which bloom throughout the seasons. Tall orange lilies, scented with sweet perfumes, rise from the waters. Each pool is fringed with bouquets of colourful peacock flowers, and shining silver bells are scattered around them, tinkling faintly as the wind disturbs their delicate silver petals. The pools are wondrous to behold in their full splendour, and are known as the Rainbow Ponds. But the Rainbow Ponds are so not called because of their adornment by the most beautiful flowers in the whole of Alanzia, but rather because of the waters contained within the pools themselves. For each of the rainbow ponds is a different colour. This extraordinary natural feature is said to be simply a matter of crystal deposits in the rocks beneath the pools, but this may not be true. The colours are so distinctively different that this phenomenon may well have been created by magic. Elvins would delight in conjuring up these gardens of colour, but elvins are not to be found in the area. Most likely, this is the magic of elves. Needless to say, speculation abounds about the mysterious properties of the Rainbow Ponds. The turquoise pond, it is said, brings the gift of beauty. Bathing in the waters of the amber pool before attempting a new skill will ensure excellence, no matter whether the skill be mental or physical. And the ruby pool bestows charismatic powers. No one will meet such a bather without experiencing immediate feelings of affection and friendship. Perhaps some, or perhaps none of these stories are true. Perhaps one of them turns you into a girl. No one can be found who has ever set eyes on the Rainbow Ponds. This in itself may be due to their enchanted nature. The pools are an oasis in the midst of a jungle of chaos. A nirvana which once found persuades any visitor to remain forever in awe of the beauty of the rainbow ponds. Stittle Woad. The most recent stories of the rainbow ponds have caused great excitement amongst adventurers and explorers, for rumour has it that the ponds form part of the domain of the white-haired wood elves of Stittle Woad. We are on 26 pages so far. The elven village of Stittle Woad, or Erendudenath in the Elvish language, is a mystery to outsiders. Protected by elven magic, no one may discover the village without an invitation from the elves themselves, and the elves will admit only those who swear to preserve the secret of its whereabouts. But one thing is for sure, Erendudenath is to be found deep within the Forest of Spiders. Notice how many proper nouns we've had introduced. Notice how many titles and important phrases and important names have been just dropped on you, and then they do actually take time to pull over and explain what some of those titles are, which creates this odd thing where one might be given reason to feel, it's a bit much to just do this kind of thing, right? And then you find it's actually even worse if they explain them. So you've got to be a bit more economic with your introduction of concepts as opposed to just lore dumping it like this. Occasionally one of the more adventurous young elves can be found outside the forest. Curious about the world beyond their treetop kingdom, they will roam abroad, sometimes coming into contact with other races and, very occasionally, entering the cities of men. One such elf, known as Liha Falsehope, ventured as far as the town of Chalice, where he succumbed to the temptations that exist in such places. I would have been very unsurprised if that was a young lady, but dudes all the way down at this point. Stories spread of this mysterious white-haired creature whose manner was so delightful that young women of Chalice would follow him wherever he went, tittering and offering their favours. I said tittering. The rowdy menfolk knew him as a regular in the town's drinking establishments. They watched in amazement as he entered and won every drinking contest in every inn. At a street market he once acquired a well-made mandolin, and with a short time he was a master of the instrument, delighting every audience with his amusing songs. Oh no, it looks like we got an isekai protagonist in here. As his status rose to that of celebrity within Chalice, folk naturally inquired about his past. At first he managed to remain true to his vow of silence, but this has only caused rumours to circulate. The vow of silence just dropped in there. Not all of which were complimentary to Falsehope. Eventually he was forced to reveal glimpses of his real past. His story so enthralled his listeners, and each glimpse spread like wildfire as news around the town, that he was encouraged to tell more and more. Many of his stories he set to music, and even today his songs are known and sung by all the minstrels of Western Alanzia. But finally, one night after far too much ale and maybe a little smoking weed, content warning drugs, I guess, Liha Falsehope revealed that more than he should have done. In his drunken conversation with a young serving wench, he not only revealed that Erendudenath existed, but could be found deep in the Forest of Spiders, but his loose tongue told the story of the Vapors, whose secret had hitherto been known only to his fellow elves. After he had finished telling his story to the wench, and the large crowd of eavesdroppers who had gathered around him, Falsehope realized his folly. Well, that name. Desperately he tried to cover up his words, but this merely prompted more and more questions from the crowd. The question most obvious was, and what was the name of this village of yours? For men find elven names difficult to pronounce. Falsehope searched quickly for a name that would throw him off the track, and from somewhere deep in his memory the name of Stittle Woad appeared. Stittle Woad is in fact a particular type of dye used by elves to colour their clothes. The young elf was devastated when the effects of the ale wore off and he realized what he had done. The secrets of generations of wood elves had been revealed to all and sundry in the common inn. He left the town of Chalice and returned to his home in the Forest of Spiders, where he lived the rest of his days in disgrace. Until the day he died, he and his family were social outcasts in Erendudenath. Even today, the family of Urelia Falsehope, Liha's great-grandson, must bear the shame which cannot be forgotten of revealing the existence of what became known as the Vapors of Stittle Woad. Again, this is one part loading screen, one part really agonizing opening cutscene. Like, I complained about the Skyrim trolley, but like we are 20 minutes in. The Vapors of Stittle Woad. High in the treetops of this forest, the elves are protected from harm. Okay. After their creation, the gods were astonished at the natural grace and beauty of the Whitehead elves had brought to life. Okay. Within 4 seasons of her ascension to the throne, the queen would always give birth. Neat. No normal child was born to the queen. Okay. This is the background to Creature of Havoc. Much of what you have read will be of little help to you, and some of the information may even lead you astray. As you will find when you start your adventure, you have only the faintest awareness of your surroundings, and your actions will be ruled by instinct, the instincts of the creature you are, but gradually you will develop more control over your destiny. As the adventure progresses, you'll be asking yourself the questions that must ask in life. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? The answers you find to these questions will depend on which paths you choose as the creature of Havoc. Okay, so you don't know any of that. We're just giving you this lore dump so that the player can make decisions that we think that they are appropriately geared to make, I guess. Or we just really wanted to tell you about the backstory and about how one elf got drunk one time. This is not efficient storytelling in games, I just want to say. The pain is unbearable. Summoning up all your energy, you open your eyes. First one, then the other. They narrow to slits as they adjust themselves to the strain of trying to see once more, then relax as they make out the familiar shapes in the dim light. A dirt floor, rocky walls. Then the pain takes over. Your head rocks. Your eyes submit and close tightly in an agonized grimace. Instinctively, you raise your hands to cup your face, and a low moan mingles with a rasping sound as your rough fingers rub the scaly skin above your eyes. After some time, the pain begins to ease. You open your eyes once more and peer out from between your gnarled fingers. You seem to be at the dead end of a passageway. Your surroundings are barely visible, but a dull glow is coming from the northern extent of the passageway, which stretches before you. A sound is also coming from this direction, of irregular breathing. Something alive is up there. You heave your great bulky body to its feet. Mood. Along your back, the spines bristle. Mood. Swinging your heavy head slowly from side to side, your progress is decided. Northwards is the only option open to you. Muscles strain and succeed in raising a lumbering foot, which thuds loudly down on the ground in front of you. You repeat the action, first with one foot, then the other. After 4 steps, the motion has become automatic. You're moving more quickly and more quietly up the passage. When you reach the end, your eyes are drawn to a huddled shape lying on the ground in front of you. A small figure lies on its side, facing away from you. It's shrouded in a dirty brown cape tied around its neck, and it lies in a puddle of thick red liquid. Its body rises and falls irregularly with each breath. Some unidentified feeling swells within you. Is it anger, hate, fear, curiosity, hunger, or even sympathy? You bend down towards the little creature, uttering a meaningless grunt as you do so. The sound rouses the figure, which rolls slightly over to face you. The creature's dirty face is a light skin, though barely visible under the thick hair, which shades its closed eyes and almost totally obscures its mouth. From its chin, the hair rolls abundantly down its chest in a grey, unruly mass. Underneath the body, and now exposed by the creature's movement, a tiny, shiny shaft. A sharp, shiny shaft, and this catches your attention. As you stand there staring, the creature's eyes flick open. They focus on your bulky shape, and a look of terror streaks across the creature's face. In spite of its pain, it fumbles forward and grasps the shiny shaft, holding its pointed end out towards you and baring its teeth. The wounded dwarf you have found is evidently in need of help. Will you show him you mean no harm, try to talk to him, or bring your foot down heavily on his neck? Look, I default to trying to be nice in these things. It will often get you hooped, but also, like, the way it gets you hooped is like a fight. So, let's go for it. Let's show we mean no harm, so we got a 93. You reach down with your little hand to help him to his feet, but as you move, the little creature strikes and his sword cuts into your forearm. Luckily, the tough scales prevent it from doing any real harm, but you must lose 2 stamina points. What did I do? What did I say? Considering your size in comparison to his, the action was understandable. Now, instead of reaching for his arm, your hand opens and grips the dwarf's neck. You struggle to control your actions, but to no avail. Your sharp talons dig into the unfortunate creature's flesh. His eyes bulge, and he tries to scream. Frantically, he hits you again with a sword, but the blow lacks power. Deduct 1 more stamina point. Then, his body goes limp. So, just took 3 damage for trying to help. Your tremendous strength put the poor creature out of its misery, but the incident left you feeling very strange. Although you wish to help the dwarf, you have really only helped him to an early grave. Will you put these thoughts out of your mind and leave the area, turn to 248, or you try and hide the body, turn to 218, or you examine the body, turn to 399? I don't imagine we're going to get anything out of this guy. It would be very in keeping with this genre to make it so that, yeah, if you didn't keep the thing off the dwarf in the first room, what's wrong with you? Okay, let's go 399. Your hands relax and the sharp claws retract into your fingers. You You clomble clumsily through the dwarf's dirty vestments. Your fingers will not fit into the pockets, but you do succeed in snapping the thongs of a large leather pouch which the creature has around its waist. As the ties break, the pouch spills its content on the ground in front of you. It contains several circular pieces of shiny metal and a piece of hide, which unfolds as it drops out of its pouch. It is light in colour and has markings all over one side. You pick it up awkwardly and look at it, but it makes no sense at all. You become quite fascinated by this piece of leather. You turn it around, rub your hands, and throw it in the air. You place it on your arm and on your head. You decide to take the leather with you. Unknown to you, the message on the hide may be useful later in your adventure. Turn to 337 to examine the message. If you're carrying this piece of hide, you may return to 337 at any time to re-examine, but you will need to remember the reference you have come from in order to return and continue. So this was relatively new tech in this one, where it was willing to say, hey, yeah, go to this location, but you can go there at any time, but you're going to have to keep track of where you were to come back. Interestingly, that's actually something it didn't do typically. So we got a piece of leather, and we can go to page 337. Okay, neat. As you may have realized by now, your own wishes have little effect on your reactions as a creature. Yeah, that's what, when it told me that I was playing with it and putting it in my head. You've only glimpses of what you are like and what you are capable of. Although this will change as the adventure progresses, at this stage you are at the mercy of your own whims and instincts. You are standing at a junction where you may go either east or west. Roll one die. If you roll 1, 2, or 3, turn to 308. If you roll 4, 5, or 6, turn to 148. So, we will roll a dice. 148. You decide to follow the passage east to your right. The first steps are slow to take the encounter at the dwarf. After a few paces, the corridor turns north. You approach a stout wooden door and must make a decision. Will you smash the door from its hinges and continue, or will you give up on this route and return to the dwarf's corpse? Roll one die. If it is 1 or 2, turn to 419. 3 to 6, turn to 72. Let's see. 2. So we go to 419. You shift your weight and turn your great bulk around. With laboured steps, you stomp back to the way you came and past the lifeless body. Turn to 308. We did not choose violence. I say we. You're not here. You're not helping me. You travel west along a twisting passageway. Several times you bump clumsily into the walls and grunt in annoyance. But your tough scales protect you from damage. The temperature drops noticeably, and after each breath sends steamy snorts from your nostrils. After narrowing slightly, the passage widens and leads towards a chamber. A sound ahead and a flickering light warn you to take care, but rather than making you stop to listen, the prospect of an encounter seems to excite you. You bare your teeth and claws and stride forward into the chamber. Turn to 205. Roaring like an enraged demon, you rush into the open chamber, ready to take on whatever is on the inside. Terrified shrieks from the small party of adventurers huddling around a makeshift campfire in the center of the area. 3 figures are warming themselves by the fire. One wears shiny clothes that clink as he moves. Another is dressed in red and also grows a long dark hair from his chin. The third is a tiny creature with polished hide on his chest. He has no hair on his chin, but he has plenty on his feet, which he has been holding to warm at the fire. Your eyes fix on the smallest of the 3. Your breathing gets heavier, and a feeling of pure hatred grips you. Without hesitating, you stomp across and grab the miserable hobbit with your claws. The other 2 are caught off balance and are slow to react. The hobbit has no weapon and should be an easy victim. If you defeat the creature in 3 straight attacks rounds, turn to 160. If it takes longer than 3 rounds, turn to 86. Okay. So first up, we roll for the monster. Okay, so it got 5, and we added to its 5, so we get 10. Okay. Now I've got to beat a 10. We beat a 10, so it takes 2 damage. So hobbit 6 goes to 4. Okay, next round, it's shot. Oh, okay, it got 16. I need to roll an 8 or better to beat that. I roll a 10. Okay, cool. And last round, it got a 6. And so it means it got an 11, and I got a 13. So, that's 3 straight rounds. 1 dead hobbit. Page 160. Oh. Oh! Okay, we have to go back and retrace our steps and do worse at that, because apparently page 160 is missing from this PDF. 308. Okay, 308 was where we were at one point. Okay, 205. Okay, let's see if we can get 86. Okay. Is 86 here? When you have finally killed the little creature, you must turn your attention to the two humans. While you've been battling their companions, they've been preparing to attack. The red-robed figure is facing you, pointing a little finger of each human hand at you and mumbling. The shiny human has grabbed a sword, similar, you remember, to the dwarves, but larger, and is shouting to the others. You cannot fight both at once. Which will you direct your attention towards? Roll one die. If you roll 1 to 4, you decide to take on the shiny figure. If you roll 5 or 6, you may turn towards the man in the red robes. Alright. Yep. 5 or 6, man in the red robes. Now, obviously, knowing that we have a section of this book missing, we know this run is doomed. But I do want to just do a little bit more exploring. Like, you notice that there's that dialogue that's, like, complete nonsense. Yeah. Your reaction is immediate. The red robes human deep in thought and looks an easy target. You step forward and swipe viciously at him with your claws. He screams and falls to the ground, clutching at his face. You look at the undefended wretch and prepare to deliver the death blow, but at that moment you feel a terrible sting in the back, which causes you to bellow and swing around. The remaining adventurer has lunged at you with his sword and succeeded in piercing the scales and flesh in your back. Lose 2 stamina points for the wound, and then you can face the knight in plate armor. Good grief. Remember, I haven't made a single decision at this point. Okay, if you defeat the knight... Okay, he's got skill 8, I've got skill 8. So this is going to come down to who rolls better. He rolled a 5. I rolled a 4. I take 2. He rolled an 11. Crap in a hat. I rolled a 5. I take 2. He rolls another 11. I roll doubles and kill him. I just twist his head off, apparently. Note that at no point did I do any damage to him. Like, damage. I just... off comes his head when you roll doubles. Which is, like, it's an interesting thing because it does mean that there's an added reason to keep trying when you know you're doomed in a combat. You deliver the death blow and the knight drops to the ground. With the danger now over, your thoughts turn to food. The smell of the still warm hobbit reaches your nostrils and your mouth begins to water. You snatch the creature in one hand and eagerly sink your teeth into its sweet flesh. But this will merely provide a snack for you. Inside his armor, the knight is an impossible meal, but the red-robed wizard groaning on the floor may be a new taste for you to savor. You silence his miserable whispers with a single deadly slash from your claws. For the tasty meal, you may restore your stamina to its initial level. Which means that of the, let's see, I've lost 9 hit points, so I was on 14 stamina, I'm now back up to 23. Neat! When you've eaten, you rummage through the adventurer's belongings. Their packs have little interest to you. The hobbit carried a miniature sword, and you find a rolled-up piece of thin parchment in the wizard's robe. All 3 humans carried odd-shaped lumps of a doughy substance, perhaps food, though it smells of nothing to you. They also have small hide pouches containing round, flat objects of shiny metal. You cannot think what these may be for, so you toss them aside. You must now continue your journey. Passages lead off from the chamber to the north, east, and west. You decide to take the passageway to the west. You leave the chamber, you're way led ahead by the flickering fire. This is one way to design a tutorial level, you know, where it's like, well, we can't give them too many options or it'll be overwhelming, or we don't have the resources to make a tutorial that's that expansive. Like, well, yeah, no, instead what we're just going to do is, like, force you down this one path. Eventually the firelight become too distant to help, and you are groping in your way to pitch blackness. Suddenly, a high-pitched twittering sound comes from above you, followed by others. You've disturbed a group of flying creatures who are now squeaking in alarm as they dart about you. You swipe at them blindly and catch 1 or 2 as they dive at you and scratch with your sharp claws. But your scales protect you from any serious harm, and soon you are further along the passage where the creatures evidently do not venture. The passage turns north. You follow it around and bend to the right and stop in front of a wooden door. There is no other way forward. Will you heave at the door with your shoulder, or is there something else you wish to do? Roll 1 die. If you roll 1 or 2, turn to 277. If you roll 3 to 6, turn to 101. I rolled a 1. 227. You follow the passage back to the junction and turn left in the direction indicated by the arrow. Turn to 142. A foul smell wafts along the passage and seems to get stronger as you continue. The air becomes cool and moist, and you eventually hear the splashings of flowing water. The glowstones light up the way ahead, and you can see the passage turns into a narrow arch of rock, stretching across a wide chasm. A murky river runs through the chasm, and it is this river that is responsible for that stink that fills the area. The bridge is so narrow that for the creature of your bulk, the crossing will be extremely hazardous, but there is no other way onwards. You step onto the near side of the bridge. Test your luck. If you're lucky, turn to 221. If you're unlucky, turn to 193. Okay, so we are at page 142. Let's just double check how testing your luck goes. Roll 2 dice, and if the number is equal to or lower than my luck, I've been lucky. Okay, going back to 142. Now, this is a real problem, because you also lose a point of luck when you do this, so 2 dice. Here we go. Gotta get under 8. Hey, we got under 8, so now our luck is 7. But we did get lucky. So, 221. You cautiously make your way across the far side of the bridge, where there, with a great sigh of relief, you step on the ground again. You rest for a few moments and then turn west to continue. But your eye catches the sight of footprints which seem to head not towards the bridge, but to the edge of the ledge you are now standing on. Looking more closely, you can see that just over the edge, a series of rocks protrude down the side of the chasm as rough stairs. They lead down to a hole in the cliff. If you wish to climb down the steps, the going will be perilous as they are narrow and there is nothing to hold on to. Otherwise, the westward passage leads you on for a few paces to a strong wooden door with iron fastening. Will you attempt to force your way through the door, or would you like to investigate the chasm, the steps leading down the hole on the side of the chasm? Okay, so this is interesting. I've actually got a choice: a door or the. You know what? I've confronted multiple doors and not smashed them down. I think that's a failing on my part. Let's smash a door. 425. The door is decorated with plates and symbols forged in metal. In its center is a sign which reads a bunch of nonsense that I'm not going to try and read aloud again. The door is locked, so you decide to try breaking it down. You give a hard shove with your shoulder. It shudders, but it does not budge. Indignant, you hit it again, but it will still not open. Lose 1 stamina point. It's a good thing I'm so thick. Before you can decide whether or not to try again, a rustling of keys in the lock is followed by a creaking noise as the door opens. A thin, dark face appears at the door and looks at you. Says something. The black elf irritates you with his arrogant manner. You do not waste time with him. You grunt and smack your face into the door, knocking it wide open. It clangs into the wall behind, and the black elf's jaw drop opens. Black elves, I'm already feeling some degree of yikesism. The room inside is sparse. There is a table and a chair against one wall, and on the table stands a plate with some food on it and a bottle of drink. Behind the table, 2 bunches of keys are hanging on the wall. An archway leads from the room into the blackness beyond. You must step inside and fight the black elf pounces. You must fight him. Alright. Well, after 2 rounds, turn to 275. So I think I just have to survive these. And I don't know if the game's going to handle it if I kill him. So he has a 7, I have an 8. So if I just roll... I just need to be able to roll 1 higher than him. So he got a 5. I got a 9. Yeah, okay. Let's call him a Delph. And he's gone from 6 to 4. And he's gone from 4 to 2. And now it's page 275, even though nothing happened there. That was a way for me to lose stamina, but not a way for me to actually, affect things. Interesting. The black elf realizes he's no match for your strength, and he suddenly pulls from his lip pocket a small whistle that he puts to his lips and blows. The shrill sound can barely be heard, and you take advantage of the elf's distraction to grab him in your claws. But before you choke the life out of him, his signal is answered, and a large creature steps through the archway. This creature is covered in heavy armor. Vicious spikes jut out from every joint, and a large, dark-eyed helmet reaches down to its shoulder. It carries a 2-handed axe, which it now raises to do battle. You must ignore the black elf and instead turn to face this Chaos Warrior. Chaos Warrior skill 9, so I need to roll 1 better than it every time, or get doubles. Whoop, okay. So it got 7, which means it's got a 15. Sorry, it's got a 16. I need to roll an 8 or more. I got an 8. Okay. So, Chaos Warrior has gone from 8 to 6. It got a 6, so you get a 7 or better. I got a 7 or better. Okay. So it goes to 4. It got a 6. I got a 6, so I take 2. It got 9. Yeesh, I need to roll a 10 or better. Or doubles. Doubles would be good. I got doubles and tore its head off. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love this doubles mechanic. Weird kind of hopeful feel. Okay, 256. Breathing heavily, you rise to your feet and stand over the body of the Chaos Warrior. Your attention turns to the Black Elf, who was once more blowing his whistle for reinforcements. Instantly, another Chaos Warrior appears in the doorway, ready for battle. You must resolve your fight with him. Skill 8, Stamina 7. This is a palette swap fight, and also, this is terrible design. Like, this is literally, we have no better idea than just doing the same thing again. Alright, let's see, we've got the same skills, so I just need to roll better. He got better, so he got a 9. I got a 7, so I take 2. He got a 6. And I tore his head off. At this point, it's looking like I'm trying to find which of these bottles of shampoo has still got something in it. 39. No sooner have you dealt the final death blow than another Chaos Warrior appears in the archway. Resolve your combat with the creature. This is exactly... God damn it. So he has 1 skill point higher than me, and he can take 4 hits. Okay. Alright, so I need to roll an 8. I rolled a 10 and killed him instantly. Instant death. Wow. That's probably not how that's meant to go. There's probably a little more tension in that, but wow. As the defeated warrior slumps to the dead to the ground, another steps in through the archway to take up the battle. He must fight this one too. We are at 4 Chaos Warriors. Seven versus my 8. Okay, so he takes... I'm 1 higher than him, so... But he goes from 8 to 6. He gets a 6, so he's got a 13. I need to break that 5 to get that. But I don't, so I take another 2 points. Oh! He gets a 6, so 13. I roll doubles and kill him. Now, before I go to 46, who wants to bet that's another Chaos Warrior? and we have lost. We have lost this game because, as you can see, if you win this battle, turn to 39. 39 takes us here. 39 takes us to 397. And 397 takes us to 46. So this game has now trapped us in basically a death loop. We can sit here killing Chaos Warriors forever, but eventually they will wear us down and we will die. Now, I think that it's a very fitting way to conclude Creature of Havoc, but also that's so dumb. I find these game books fascinating. I really like them, and I want to do more stuff like this with them, where what I'm doing is using this format to share the experience of reading one of these game books. But this one in particular, the stuff in it that I find really interesting comes up much later after you've gotten through the random shambling. And like you can see, what happened there is I made one wrong decision. I decided to open a door as opposed to going down some stairs. Everything else was pre-programmed. Everything else I didn't have a choice on, and it was just random dice. So the point after this, where you start to get the ability to translate things, is one thing that, like, you could go back and you can actually just translate. It's a cipher. It's a common cipher that you can use to translate the dialogue that you've been given so far, which is interesting, but also there's no way to know how far in that would be, and since we're missing chunks of the book, I can't even be sure how to get there. So I think this was a fun experiment. I really like this dice roll by Sophie Holden, and I also really like this PingTuber avatar Fox has set up for me, which at least makes things a little more interesting looking. But yeah, there we go. Our Creature of Havoc dies eventually under a giant pile of Chaos Warriors. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's still standing there, killing Chaos Warriors one at a time by twisting their heads off. What a stupid book.